Every education system in the world is currently being reformed. The modern system of public education was born at the time of Industrial Revolution, subjecting every student to a standardized learning model to mass-produce workers for industries and corporations. The renowned education expert Sir Ken Robinson calls it the fast food model of education. Same, prepackaged, fast-prepared meals for everyone, instead of tailoring to each individual's needs. This has got to change.
As a child, I dreamed of what I wanted to become: a doctor, a teacher, a scientist, an architect. Children today have these same dreams. We encourage them to think big and set their sights high. But for millions of students in America, it's much harder for that dream to come true. These students are handed a system that doesn't give everyone the same opportunity to succeed. Students from low-income communities are often forced to attend underperforming schools that fail to prepare them to succeed in college and their careers. Nearly 3/4 of low-income fourth graders are not proficient in reading, and roughly 2 out of every 5 Black and Hispanic teenagers do not graduate from high school, cutting their dreams short and setting the stage for unemployment, increased crime, and a host of other problems. This failure affects all of America as we fall short of our ideals of equal opportunity and lag farther and farther behind other countries in academic achievement. As a parent, I see the need for immediate action that will transform our public school system and give our children the opportunity to not only dream big, but also see their dreams come true.
Education is a broad topic that generates many issues of advantages and disadvantages. This subject will never have a means of equal ground to represent. Therefore, there will always be a form of debate with any idea that is established within this field. One of the main issues within this field is the idea of reform within schools. Schools were once created on grounds of just simply wanting to learn how to read, write, and understand numbers. Now in our society, schools have grown and evolved to new teachings which generate the need for change in what was used to be known as traditional school.
Back to your time in high school. Did you ever feel that you were in a prison? Did you ever feel that you were in a machine that had its own purposes and goals and had no relation to what you actually wanted to do or achieve? If you did, then you shouldn't be surprised, because this reflects the nature of what the modern school is. The modern school was invented by the Prussians after 1806. Before then, education was delivered in many different ways. What we think of as the school was invented in that particular time and place. And it was invented for a very particular purpose, which was to produce loyal, obedient subjects and soldiers, and people who would also be productive and obedient workers. It's this that explains why school is the way it is and has the features that it has. It explains why it is that the school day is divided up into rigid, time-structured blocks. It explains why it is that the organisation of the school is hierarchical and highly structured. It explains why it is that people are taught with people of their own age instead of people who are at the same stage of interest or ability as themselves. And it explains why in many school systems, one of the functions of the system is to direct people into particular life paths, to sort out young people into different kind of career groups. To the extent that education actually does take place in schools, it's a happy accident or a byproduct. Now, there are many people who work in schools who believe that education in fact is the main point of what they're doing, and who are trying very hard to educate the people in their charge. However, the problem is that the whole system they're working in, the way it's set up and the way it is organised, is hostile to that golden endeavour, so that they're in the unfortunate position of constantly trying to push water uphill, if you will, and any success they have is gained against the odds. What we need to realise is that education and schooling are not the same thing. In fact, because we think that schooling is the same thing as education, we have a radically impoverished idea of what education is and could be. Why, for example, do we assume that education should only take place at one stage of a person's life? Education is something that can take place at any stage in someone's life, and indeed should do. Why assume that we have to educate people of the same age altogether? Surely this is a crazy way of doing it. Why do we have to deliver education in the highly structured and formalised way that schools require us to do it in? Education is something which will be central to most people's lives. What we need to do is to get away from the idea that schools are the only way in which we can deliver education.
There will always be a need for change in the educational world. With that change comes negative and positive opinions from the voices of those who are affected by reform. You have some of those ideas in reform that generate money into the schools, or a need for change in teacher performance, or a change in the workload of students in the classrooms. However, some of these ideas are just a waste of time. The reason for change in schools grew with the advances of our country itself. As the idea of reform increased, the changes in how schools should function increased as well. Not only has the formations of schools became different, but the way of how to keep schools functional changed too.
Despite decades of reform attempts and billions of dollars of investment, the American education system badly needs improvement.
It's not where it needs to be. There's too many places that aren't doing well.
The report card shows only 34% of 8th graders are proficient in math, 29% in science, 33% in reading. Compared to other countries, American students score near the bottom, 21st out of 30 in science, and it's even more bleak in math. They're 25th.
Good. One sausage.
Those in the trenches, like Washington, D.C. school chancellor Michelle Rhee, say the reason is not the kids, it's the system.
In society, there is not a particularly high regard for education.
The problem, educators say, our most talented minds head into medicine, law, and technology. A teaching career is often an afterthought, given the salary. The average elementary school teacher earns $50,000 a year. Physicians average $100,000 more than that. Another problem is what kids are learning. Unlike most other countries that have national standards of what to teach, in the U.S., it's a state-by-state decision.
These districts often face enormous management challenges.
Andy Rotheram co-founded Education Sector, an education think tank. He says in many states, the standards are low.
We had a public school system that served us very well for the 20th century when America had an industrial economy, basically an economy predicated on building things and moving them around. The economy's changed.
And then there's the politics of education. Tenure and unions sometimes protect even bad teachers. And with limited funds, there's always a budget battle. For example, more money for a successful charter school means less for public schools.
Too often people think, well, everybody in education is just all about the kids. But it's an industry like any other where you have a variety of interests.
The end result? Only 70% of kids in this country graduate on time. In the District of Columbia, it's more like half. And it's not because the school system doesn't have any money.
We spend more money per child than almost any other urban jurisdiction in this country, and yet our outcomes are at the absolute bottom.
But Rhee thinks she may have one solution for reforming education. Treat it like any other business. Make educators accountable for their successes and failures. If you don't succeed as a principal or teacher, she wants you out.
Absolutely.
Harvard University, where Rhee got her master's, agrees that the key to reforming education is to start at the top.
We've got a spring course which will...
This fall, it will offer its first new doctoral program in 74 years in education leadership.
What we want is to recognize that education is a business.
Kathy McCartney is the dean.
So leaders need not only a background in the education sector, but also a background in management.
The Harvard program is all about management, taught in part by professors at the business school.
Is that all the elements? No. Strategy.
Harry Spence is co-director of the program.
Increasingly, principals are people who are really strong instructionally. They then move into the principalship, and they're managing a very complex environment. Nobody's ever taught them how to do that often.
So Harvard will, immersing students in budgets and conflict resolution. And because Harvard wants to attract those who might normally be swayed by higher-paying careers, the program is totally free. More than 1,000 people have applied for just 25 slots.
I think there's a real hope that in 10 years, you'd see our graduates in senior roles in organizations that are making a real difference.
If they're right, school systems will end up with better leaders who hire better teachers, and American students may finally make the grade.
Education will always be a subject that contains many issues. In order to find a solution to the issues, we must strive for change in education rather than coming up with ideas to cover up the problem at hand.